Good afternoon, ladies and a few gentlemen. I'm Linda Dykes, and I'm president of one of the local chapters of PEO, which is the organization that's sponsoring this presentation this afternoon. PEO is a women's philanthropic educational organization that supports women through love and money. Over the years, PEO has given away over $425 million in scholarships, grants, loans to those studying. Yeah, that's a lot of money. PEO believes in women and making their lives better in any way we can. We give money for PhDs, for master's programs, for collegiate programs, for certificated programs that will help women to earn a better living and have a better life. Now, the lady you're supposed to meet this afternoon is quite feisty. Jeannette Rankin was born in 1880, graduated college in 1902, and was elected to the House of Representatives of the United States in 1916, the first woman to be elected. She also ran in 1960 again and got reelected. So that tells you she had a little bit of spunk. Jeannette, are you here? Please come up.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you so much. May I stand? I fight better standing. I say those words when addressing the House Judiciary Committee in 1969 about the Electoral College. I'm against it. Let me tell you how it happened. I enter the chamber and sit. And when it is my turn, as I am standing, the chairman says, "Miss Rankin, you may remain seated." I suppose he does that in deference to my advanced age. I'm 88 years old. But I'm already standing, so I'm not really asking for permission. I'm just trying to be polite. I'm Jeannette Rankin. Not a household name or as well known as I ought to be, which is why I am delighted that Beth Rankin Urech has written this play about me. Beth did the research and learned that her great-grandfather and my grandfather were brothers, so we're related. I love the idea of Beth's voice speaking my words. Beth and I never met. We could have. She could have marched with me in the Jeannette Rankin Brigade, but back in those days, she wasn't very political. She is now, hence this play about me, in which you will learn about my accomplishments and my regrets. My biggest regret is that I'm not still alive today because, I would have so much to say about what's happening in the government right this minute. Let me just say that I believe in you women, and we need more women in government. We need women to clean up the social disgraces that exist in our country. We need women to vote and to get out the vote. Do you see this ballot box with vote emblazoned on it? Well, this is my favorite box. I know some women might prefer a jewelry box or a hat box. I've had plenty of those. But for me, the ballot box signifies the responsibility, the duty, and the right that we have to vote for the government that we want to govern us. My whole life has been determined by the votes I have cast. I voted against entry into both world wars. I introduced and then voted for the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote from sea to shining sea. I voted with my feet when I led the Jeannette Rankin Brigade to protest the war in Vietnam, but I'm getting ahead of myself, as I always do. When I was 30, I asked, what can I, one person, accomplish? And I spent my entire life fighting. I fought for suffrage for a decade and got it. I have fought for peace for 55 years and haven't come close. My story begins on a ranch outside Missoula, Montana, where I was born in 1880. Growing up in the West, with its bright blue skies and its broad horizons, has shaped my outlook and character. Back then, men and women worked side by side on the ranch. They shared responsibilities. Of course, women didn't have the vote. That was wrong. Eventually, I'd do something about that. My father, John Rankin, a carpenter, emigrated from Canada with his toolkit and the will to succeed. My mother, Olive Pickering, a school teacher, came from New Hampshire. They met, they married. A year later, I arrived. You know, when Beth was doing research for this play at the Jeannette Rankin Peace Center in Missoula, the executive director gave Beth my christening dress. Look, isn't this sweet? And she said, well, that as Beth was related to me, she thought Beth ought to have it. Now, you know, this little christening dress may have been worn by more than just me. I'm the eldest of 7 children, 6 girls and 1 boy. We always called Wellington the boy. As a girl, what I liked most was riding alongside my father as he surveyed the ranch. That was the privilege of being the eldest. One day I was at the corral and I saw one of our horses trot back with a bloody gash on its shoulder. The ranch hands just stood there. I knew they were getting ready to put that poor horse out of its misery. Wait! I ran inside. I came back with a needle and thread. I sewed up that 10-inch bloody gash. I saved the horse's life. Another time, one of our ranch dogs got his paw caught in a trap. I amputated the paw, and then I made him a little bootie to wear. Now, Shep, you wear that bootie. Good boy. When I was still a girl, Father got some farm equipment to put the hay up in the hayloft, and the pulley mechanism jammed. The ranch hands just stood there. Wait, Father, I think I can figure this out. Look, if we just move the pulley, yes, now it works. My father was so proud of me, I almost burst. Another time, a prospective renter of one of my father's houses wanted a boardwalk out in front of the house. Father refused. Well, he was Scottish, thrifty, you know. So I got the lumber. I built the boardwalk. I guess you can see I'm pretty handy with tools and with a needle and thread. Our sister, Philena, dies at just 9 years of age. I'm just 11 years old. Our mother grieves deeply. And after that, it's pretty much up to me to raise my siblings. Later, they said I was bossy. Well, of course I was bossy. I had to be. We all graduate from college. I graduate in 1902. I major in biology and do my senior thesis on snails. I don't much like college. You might be able to figure that out. I write in my diary, go, go, go. At the first opportunity, just go. But it takes me almost a decade to figure out where. When I'm 24, I head east for the first time. A school chum and I go to visit Wellington, who is studying at Harvard Law School. Wellington falls ill. I nurse him back to health. Wellington gets well. And then we get ourselves invited to President Teddy Roosevelt's inaugural ball. Dancing and beautiful ball gowns. I am an accomplished seamstress, and I love looking at the president's wife, Mrs. Roosevelt, is in a pale blue brocaded satin with a little dip at the waist. It's exquisite. Then we travel to New York City. We stay at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. I love promenading up and down Fifth Avenue, but I am appalled at the filth and slums. I go home, but I'm not a simple ranch girl anymore. The poverty that I have seen in Washington, D.C., and New York, and Boston haunts my dreams. I head west to San Francisco, which is also rampant with squalor. I stumble upon a settlement house on Telegraph Hill and work there for a while. I read the already famous Jane Addams, Social Worker. Wait, I'll become a social worker to help eradicate the suffering that surrounds me. When I'm 28 years old, I head back to New York City and study at the School of Philanthropy on East 22nd Street. It's now Columbia University School of Social Work. Classes, morning. Afternoon, field work. I am assigned to the Italian Jewish district near the Bowery, the happiest place in all of New York City, despite the misery. One day, I have to take a little 3-year-old boy to the orphanage. I arrive at the tenement house. Oh, there he is. Oh, just 3 years old. And his face is just filled with laughter and joy. Hi. His mother has 2 younger children, and the father has gone missing. She doesn't seem to mind as I take him. Come on, come with me now. As we leave, she just waves, bye-bye. I can't believe it. Before long, I realize it is not my calling to be a social worker, but to work for social change. I head to the state of Washington. I study. I set my sights on women's suffrage. Now, I am an excellent organizer. I get sent to Ohio, Florida, Michigan, and then, wait! Why not get the vote for the women in my home state. To do that, I travel 9,000 miles all over Montana. Years later, John F. Kennedy writes that I traveled by horseback. That is just a Wild West myth. I travel by train, but where the train is inaccessible, I drive. Wellington teaches me how to drive his Model T. I love driving fast. Let's go! I am a grassroots organizer down to the core. I speak everywhere. In schools, I tell children, go home, ask your fathers why they don't want your mothers to vote. I speak on street corners, outside dance halls and saloons. I have a formula for speaking which always works. I begin by saying something friendly like, hello. You know, your representative is an honest, upright man, but he's against suffrage, and that's your fault. You haven't told him how you feel. I know you men of the West aren't afraid of anything. And then I relate a little story about a timid boy whose father is trying to explain that he has nothing to be afraid of. But Pa, what if you'd see a great big lion? Oh, you don't have to worry about a lion. They stay way out in the woods. They don't come round here. But Pa, what if you'd see a great big black bear? Wouldn't you be afraid? Oh, no, Sonny, wouldn't be afraid, and I wouldn't let it hurt you. Pa, is Ma the only thing you're afraid of? Well, then the men would chuckle, and then I would say, but you men of the West aren't afraid of your women, and you're not afraid to give them the vote. Then I make my pitch. It is altogether fitting and proper for a mother to sit at the bedside and nurse her child through typhoid fever. It is altogether fitting and proper for that same woman to be able to vote for measures which regulate the supply of milk from which typhoid can spread. It works. Women get the vote in Montana in 1914. But I'm exhausted. I need a break. I hop on a ship and head to New Zealand, where I stay for a couple of years. I work as a dressmaker and learn about the problems of working women. And by the way, New Zealand is the first country in the world to give universal suffrage in 1893. Then I head back to Montana, where I have set the stage to run for the House of Representatives. In my campaign, I talk about the federal government, which has allocated $300,000 to study fodder for hogs, and only $30,000 to study the needs of our children. If the hogs of the nation are 10 times more valuable than our children, well, then it is high time that women had the vote and were able to influence voting. Now, I am running alongside 7 men, and each voter, men and women now, has 2 votes. So I say, vote for the man you want and vote for me. But have I won? Nobody can tell me. 3 days later, when I open my front door, oh, my yard is filled with reporters and photographers and flashbulbs flashing and, I say, all you pesky journalists, get out of my yard. I'm not going to come out again until you leave. You know that day, that very day, I might have been the most famous woman in the entire world. Yes, the entire world. Because you see, I am the first woman anywhere elected to a national legislative body. People are surprised, well, shocked, that a woman has run, and newspapers report differently. Some say that I will probably ride into Washington, D.C. on my pony carrying a Winchester rifle. And other newspapers predict that I'm just going to be a dried-up old spinster. On my way to Washington, D.C., I stop off and speak at Carnegie Hall to an audience of 3,000. Later, the reviewer writes, "Charm would be the first word to use in describing Miss Jeannette Rankin. She wore a simple frock of crepe Georgette with a wide band of fur at the hem." Why do people spend so much time talking about what we women wear? He continued, "Her face was always smiling, and her voice seemed ready to break into the laughter of irrepressible youth. I'm 36 years old. She might have been 19 or 23. Fiddlesticks, I'm 36 years old. But judging from her words, she must have been much older. Well, I'm only 36. I tell my audience, I feel a duty to represent the men, women, and children of my home state. But I feel a special duty to all the women in this grand country, the mothers who don't want their sons to go off to war, the wives who can't afford groceries for the table, the little girls growing up in states where women do not have the vote. My arrival in Washington, D.C. is momentous. President Woodrow Wilson asks for a vote on whether or not to enter the war. This is to be my first vote, my very first vote. This is to be the very first vote ever cast by a woman in Congress. At the first roll call, I do nothing. At the second roll call, I stand. I want to stand by my country, but I cannot vote for war. I vote no. I am one of only 50 who vote against entrance into the World War. Later they said, I cried. I did not cry. But that first vote determined the rest of my life. You know, you can no more win a war than you can win an earthquake. Armistice is declared on the 11th day at the 11th hour of the 11th month in 1918. And the following spring, I head to Switzerland for the Second International Conference of Peace and Freedom. I tell our hosts, Guten Tag, hello. We are delighted to be here with you in Urech. And we see here in this clearer atmosphere, war truly is the supreme folly. And we are the first organization to officially denounce the Treaty of Versailles, saying it will inevitably lead to further bloodshed, which it does, the Second World War. Back in the U.S., people are, sometimes amazed that I spend as much time as I do in the state of Georgia. Well, why not? The climate is much milder than it is in Montana, and it's only 600 miles from Washington, D.C., as opposed to 2,200 miles. I buy a farm with 64 acres, and when I'm traveling, the house burns down. I try to build a rammed earth house. That doesn't go well. Eventually, I move into the 3-room caretaker's cottage at Shady Grove, and my caretaker lives in the main house. I like it that way. I like my simple life. I don't have running water. Why do I need running water when I can just step outside and dip my pail into the well? And when I'm not expecting visitors, I can just laze the whole day around in my bathrobe, drinking buttermilk. And when my oriental carpet gets a little tattered, well, I just sit on the floor with little pots of red and black paint and redesign the pattern. In 1928, I found the Georgia Peace Society, which I use as my headquarters for my pacifism campaign. And my pacifism does increase the older I get. In 1934, the American Legion labels me a communist. The whole situation arises over a misunderstanding. The sum of my radicalism appears to be that I have an opposition to war. I sue the Macon Evening News for slandering me and calling me a communist. A year later, it's settled. It doesn't go to trial, and the editor of the newspaper hands me $1,000 and says, I'm a nice lady. Huh. I continue to travel a lot to Washington, where my ideas and experiences are always in demand. In 1939, I testify to the House Foreign Affairs Committee about fascism. I say, I believe that the first step toward fascism is to ignore or decrease congressional powers. And that's exactly what's happening now, which is why I decide I must return to the state of Montana and run again for the House of Representatives. I submit my ballot 6 days before my 60th birthday. I'm not an isolationist, but I can't bear the thought of our boys dying on foreign soil. My campaign pledge? Prepare to the limit for defense. Keep our men out of Europe. It works. I am re-elected to the House of Representatives from the state of Montana. Fiorello LaGuardia, now mayor of New York City, and former congressional colleague, wires, Jeannette, congratulations. I always knew you would win. Love, Fiorello. Well, it's true. We were once an item. And he put his hand around my waist and told my sister Edna, oh, Edna, you don't know how hard I tried to get this gal to marry me. I never marry. I think most men would probably find me too strong-headed and stubborn. Oh, I know there's curiosity about my romantic relationships, also with women. Let's be candid. I am simply not cut out for a long-term relationship with either sex. I think far more important than the state of my sexual preferences is the state of our Union. December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor. FDR calls for a vote on whether or not to enter the Second World War. I have no hesitation this time around. I say, as a woman, I cannot go to war, and I refuse to send anyone else. I vote no. I am the sole dissenting vote. Wellington Wires. Jeannette, Montana is against you 110%. I'm not reelected. That's a regret. I spend the next years looking after my elderly mother on the ranch in Montana. She spends her days canning applesauce. She cans 6 quarts of applesauce every day. She stockpiles 250 quarts. And she makes jellies and cans pickles. And oh, if you've ever had to look after an aging relative, well, you know what it's like. Eventually, I take her to my sister, Edna, and I head back to Georgia. Oh, I do love Georgia. Wait, I get a wonderful idea. I'm going to build a house for elderly, older single women who don't want to spend the rest of their lives either alone or with their children. I build it out of concrete blocks on the hill over Shady Grove. It's round with 10 pie-shaped bedrooms around a central communal area with a kitchen and only one refrigerator. Oh, but that's detail. And on the hill, there'll also be a little lake for boating and swimming and a vegetable garden. Some of my friends drop in and take a look. Oh, even complete strangers. But no one moves in. That's a regret. Whenever and wherever I am asked, I continue to speak. In the course of my career, I deliver over 5,000 speeches. I am always considered feminine and forceful, often controversial, and always ahead of my time. In Nashville, I tell a group of young women, look, you have to get out into the public. It never did us suffragists any good to just sit in rooms and talk to each other. If you want to start a revolution, you have to get out to the public. You have to be stubborn and ornery. And when men start making fun of you, well, then you know you're getting on well. Well, now I'm talking about the 60s, the 1960s. Vietnam has already reared its ugly head. I don't understand how women can let their sons go off to fight in war. It reminds me of the ranch, where a cow has a calf, and then a few days later a man comes and takes the calf away, and the mama cow bawls for a while, and then goes and has another calf. I think it is unconscionable that already 10,000 young men have lost their lives, and I am convinced that if 10,000 women took to the streets and marched, they could stop the war, even if it meant going to jail. I'm depressed. I'm disillusioned. I'm wondering if perhaps my life has been in vain. The phone rings. Hello. Rankin speaking. Oh. Oh? You want to have a women's peace march to protest the war? And if I lead it, you'll call it the Jeannette Rankin Brigade? Oh yes, I may be almost 88, but you can count me in. Let's march. Oh, we march from Union Station to the Capitol. Judy Collins sings, "This land is your land." We march, the leading feminists of the day, Coretta Scott King, Julie Belafonte, Ruby Dee, Rosa Parks, Jessica Mitford, Jane Spock, Susan Sontag, and behind us, 5,000 women. We march, and when we get to the Capitol, we are stopped by the Capitol Police, who tell us we are infringing a federal law that does not allow demonstrations at our Capitol. This is wrong. This is wrong. I dispute this law. The case eventually goes to the Supreme Court. And thanks to the Jeannette Rankin Brigade, this law is overturned in 1972. And now we can demonstrate at the Capitol. Let me insist it need be peaceful demonstrations. Back in Georgia. Oh, I befriend a restless young law student. John Kirkley has his tent right in my front yard, and 2 days later, oh, I invite him in. John cleans and cooks, organizes my schedule, does secretarial work, drives me everywhere. So I decide to repay his law school debt of $3,000. My friends are dismayed. Oh, look, I tell them. Do you think I can be taken in by a 29-year-old boy? I know he's using me, but I'm using him. And at my age, I can do what I want with my money. Later, a reporter asks, Jeannette, can you ever envision having a woman president? Oh yes, it's inevitable, desirable even. Men will be delighted with a woman president. Men love to be governed by a woman. Matrimony proves that. I spend my last years working on governmental reform. The Electoral College, we all know, it's a sham. We need to abolish it. What we need is participatory democracy. It works like this. All serious candidates are put on a ballot, and voters rank them in order of preference. Some call it ranked voting. Oh, no, not Rankin voting. Oh, but that would be nice. And then computers calculate. And if the first place hasn't won a majority, then they go to the second place. And this is such an efficient way. It also gets rid of primaries and runoffs. I'm in favor of a unicameral legislature. Why do we need both a House and a Senate? And the two-party system, all most candidates do is get themselves elected and then spend the time in office getting themselves elected again. They don't accomplish much. They talk. In 1972, I traveled to New York, where I am recognized as the world's greatest living feminist. I am the first person inducted into the Susan B. Anthony Hall of Fame. I speak to an audience of 1,500 women, and I say, oh, you women, you must use all your strength to get yourselves elected to government offices. You must use your power to get people to vote. It's so important. We need more of you in government. At the end of my life, when I'm asked, Jeannette, would you do it all over again? I say, oh yes, I'd do it all over again, and next time I'd be nastier. Well, I accomplish a lot, but what I'm not able to accomplish is ending my life when I'm ready to go. My broken hip never heals. I have that nerve in my face which has caused excruciating pain for decades. Well, I have it severed, and my face sags. I can hardly speak anymore, and well, you know how important speaking always has been for me. A stroke takes my voice. I weigh 80 pounds. I beg my doctor in Carmel, California, where I'm now living, to withdraw my medications. He refuses. I die in my sleep just 3 weeks before my 93rd birthday. But now, let's have some positive audience participation. I'm going to list some of my accomplishments, and if I have accomplished it, join me in saying, check. Let's go. Get women the vote in the state of Montana in 1914, check. Vote against entrance into the First World War, check. Put forth the 19th Amendment, check. Vote for the 19th Amendment, let's hear it, check. Vote against entrance into the Second World War, check. Protest the war in Vietnam, check. Abolish the Electoral College. It hasn't happened. And heaven knows when it will happen. But this is an important year. This may be the most important election you will ever vote in. And now you have an opportunity to vote right here and now. In each of your programs, you should find a strip of paper, different colors like this. And what I would like you to do is to find one person or one issue that you feel passionately about. And imagine that you have the winning vote for that person or that issue. Something that needs to be done, possibly in this community, or in this country, or on this planet. And write down that person or that issue, and after the show, put it in my ballot box. Every time I do this show, I ask people to have a ballot and to write on it something that's very important to them. And the 2 times I did it earlier this year in Carlsbad, every single member in my audience wrote a ballot and put it in the ballot box. I encourage you to do that, to write down what it is you really want. And then to remember this year, this is a very important election year on the 5th of November. So I want you to do everything you can until the 5th of November. I want you to call people, talk to relatives, family members, complete strangers. Go outside your comfort zone. Stand up, speak up, and then you can say with me, may I stand? I fight better standing. can applaud better standing. That's wonderful. Thank you so very much. Now, I wonder if you would like to have a couple of questions and answers. If there are no questions which you just have to ask, we can also end now, and you make sure you get that ballot in the ballot box, and I will be around so I can answer any questions. It looks as if that's the way we're going to go. It's been a pleasure allowing you to meet Jeannette, my cousin, and I guess, as you can probably tell, I love being Jeannette. Thank you so very much. We'll put this out so you can all put your ballots in it. Oh,